Hi, Stefan. How are you doing?
Thank you. Very fun. How are you doing?
Doing well too. Thank you.
Hi,
We'll
Stefan.
jump. Hey, Utsav. We'll jump into a quick introduction, but let's just give people another maybe 2 minutes to join.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Hey Stefan, how are you?
Pretty fine. Thanks. How is it on your end? All good? All good. Thanks, Ari and Roshari and Yusuf, by the way, for hosting this. Quite cool opportunity.
No, thank you for taking it up. So far, we've done quite a few events, but most of our events have been very developer centric. Um, so we're really excited to be able to do something different this time and focus on UX, and that too accessibility. The team that Utsav's been working on has been doing a lot of work on accessibility recently. So we'd love to hear what you have to say about it. All right, Utsav, I want to take it up. That's an intro.
Yeah, yeah. While other people joins, we can start. Good. I'll start with a quick introduction. So I'm Utsav, and I'm one of the core organizers of the Software Craftspeople India community, and I'm also a software craftsperson at Incubite. And Incubite is a software services company focused on delivering well-crafted software. And Incubite is also the founder and sponsor of Software Craftspeople community here in India. So our community is a non-for-profit organization, and the aim is to connect people with similar mindset of software craftsmanship. We usually organize talks, roundtables, and workshops to help the community get better at their craft. We invite several experts to talk on various topics, and we usually do this. We try to do this once a month, and all of our past events are available on our YouTube channel. And you can also reach out to us on one of these handles or Twitter, LinkedIn, or Meetup. Um, yeah, so today we have Stefan Barac with us to talk on the topic of accessibility, best practices, common sense. And Stefan is a strategic designer. To just give a short introduction, and he has been creating ergonomic and accessible products and services. He has experience in the industrial design field for more than 10 years and has been creating accessibility in B2B sector, that is formulating company and product strategies and implementing them in the services and products area. Yeah, over to you, Stefan. I'll stop sharing so you can share your screen.
Thank you, Yusuf. I already saw one question or more a statement in the chat by Ludmila. We're all muted, so how will the setting be from your side? Shall the people write and type questions that they have, or raise hands, or how do we deal with that?
Right, yeah. People can just ask questions in the chat window.
Okay,
And we also have a Q&A session that they can use. They can use anything that they're comfortable with, either the Q&A session, that is a Q&A tool by Teams, or the chat window.
perfect. Thank you. And I do not, the sharing is not yet enabled on my screen. Would be great if you could send me the rights, or maybe I can even ask for the rights.
Yeah.
Yeah, there it is.
Right. You should be able to share your window.
Yes. So share and full screen. Is my screen visible?
Yep, it is.
Okay. Before I start, as Yusuf and Rushli already mentioned, I am going to be speaking about accessibility, and in the beginning, I'll be talking a little bit. Maybe Yusuf, you can hint me to questions in the chat, because I just realized that I don't see it while presenting it on this one screen. And the second part is there will be approximately 1 hour of the whole event. Half of it is going to be, or almost half of it is going to be a Q&A session afterwards. So feel free then to shoot and ask questions, and I'll try to answer them as good as I can. All right.
Stefan, one quick question before you jump in. Would you like people to hold their questions to the end, or would you like them to keep them coming as you go through your slides and your talk?
If there's questions regarding the understanding of the slides and the understanding of my explanations, it would be good if people could already type them during the talk. And if there's follow-up questions regarding certain topics, it would be perfect if you could park those questions, guys, and pose them in the Q&A. Thank you. All right. Accessibility, best practices, common sense. What is the approximate driver's plan or driving plan today? First, I'll talk about access to innovation. Then I'll talk about what is accessibility, or what is it made out of? Who is it for? Who does it concern? And how can we enable it? And also, I'll show a little bit of like a demo. Is something quick and dirty. Yeah, jumping right into it, innovation. Let's say you will have created the new most innovative product or service, and you want to provide it. So you need to give access, and you're sure that this innovation will be a game changer. It will change people's minds, perception, and it will make lives easier. So you go and test it with your target audience, user group, and you test it approximately, or I love to test it with around like 7 people. As Norman and Nielsen say, 5 to 10 people give you a very good approximation of truth or facts, because in science we don't search for truth, we search for facts. 7 people give you about 92% accuracy. So if you ask those 7 people, you will get 92% accuracy feedback. But what if your innovation has given not enough access, so that 0 of your users are able to access or even use? Then your feedback or your points score will be simply said 0. So you should already, during the conception of your strategies, of your services and products, eliminate all limiting factors to normal people, such as me. And what you should strive for minimum is, in the usability testings, to go for 5 to 6 feedbacks, which will give you 80% of the people. We always try to use this Pareto principle. We do 20% effort to get 80% of the users. That's how we do it, because getting the rest of the users or target people that you aim for is going to be very tedious and will take 80% of all your efforts. So jumping into the next chapter, what is accessibility? I photographed my door. It gives me a very nice symbol, because there is the access, and in my hand I hold the key, which is the ability to access interface. And Yeah, accessibility is basically made up or comprised by three things. The sensory inputs, everything that goes into your body, starting on the left with vision inputs, then second is haptic inputs, everything I feel, I touch, and everything I hear. Then in a lot of industrial environments, I have encountered balance inputs, slippery floors and such kind of things. And also on the right-hand side, olfactory or gustatory inputs. Sounds funny, but it's true. Just think about milk production company. They will taste and they will also smell burnt milk. And that gives you a call to action already. And a call to action or a sensory input then enables a cognitive process, which is inside of us, in the brain, in the back of our spine. And that then triggers the third part of accessibility. It triggers our motor actions. So my talking is a motor reaction. Mimic or gestics would be a motor reaction, or swiping something, like touching something or acting with my hands, with my feet, whatever I have at my disposal. Today, I will mainly focus on the sensory part because the other two deserve a big round of talk and are complex by themselves. And I don't want to give you just the surface. I want to give you a little bit of depth on the sensory inputs. I'll just go into a little bit of an industrial example. This is a basic alarm button. And accessibility can also save lives in industrial environments by this alarm button. I, for example, got my hand caught in an industrial machine, and I was really happy that the so-called emergency stop was very close to my left hand, otherwise my right hand would be gone. And this principle of ergonomics of accessibility is not only limited to the digital interfaces, it also is expanding into the physical world, basically into every fiber of our sensory and motory skills. So going to the third chapter, who are we designing for? Long time, I have been made believe that those two Greek examples were the 80% of our users. Those were our average Janes and Joes. And over the past few years, I've learned this could not be further from the truth. And the real Jane and Joes are out there. They're everyday people. They're not Greek mythological people who have no filters or limitations. They have specific needs and they have specific abilities in sensing and recognizing and also exercising within our environments of Web 3 or Internet of Things or whatever you want to call the future of the internet. So let's say we have roughly right now 8 billion people on this planet, and half male, half female. Left side is male, right side is female. Let's look at the vision part. 60% of women have minor to severe, not injuries, but filters and limits in their vision. Some or many need to wear glasses, such as myself. In men globally, it's more like 65%. And now if I add, for example, the hearing factor, that already goes up to 70/80% with men. Quite a big number regarding that we need to address 80% of people. But don't worry, because only 63% globally of the global population use the internet. So basically that number already goes down to like 45 to 50%, 45 for women, 50 for men. So coming back to the example, sometimes people mean it well. And if you remember the industrial example, I've gone to a company that I used to work for before, and a friend of mine said, how do we switch between he was asked, like, how do we switch between those applications? And he said, how about we do it with like 5 finger gestures? And that is quite common practice in those touch interfaces that Apple, for example, provides, or other companies provide nowadays in B2C or business to customer products. But in this industrial environment, people started laughing and they were saying, good luck finding a person with 5 fingers working in our company. Just food for thought. So how do the limitations, we've seen like the global limitations or inhibitions or impediments that people face or everyday people face. So the numbers were high, but not that high. How does it look in a country where I work, for example, in Switzerland, where 8 million people live, and also 50-50 women and men are? So vision is impaired more. We have almost 80% vision impairments in women. And it's not the vision impairment in the sense of the WHO. Glasses are also impairment. Like I cannot see past 20 centimeters without my glasses. And over 80% or 82% with men. And how does it look if I add on top the sensory inputs of acoustics? 86% in women, 92% in men. But wait, we'll be rescued by the internet use? No, we won't. Switzerland is one of the best connected countries in the world. So 98% of those 8 million people have or do use the access to the internet and applications and everything that comes with it. So they are very well connected. And that means that 80% of our female and 90% of our male users in Switzerland are already facing impediments that they need to overcome by any other means, like cognition or anything else. So how does it look specific? Is it the same in every age group? Or is it different? Is it same for male or female? So I've taken those 2 examples like out of this demographic chart from 2017. Typical 20 to 30-year-old male and a typical 20 to 30-year-old female. What I've found is basically, what I've found over the years is that there is a very big difference. There is, in vision, for example, or in vision impairments, the numbers are about the same, but most young men are nearsighted and most young women are farsighted, 45, 40%. They also have a different building of their eyes, and it grows nowadays with men and women due to lifestyle, because we're watching, in Switzerland, we're watching too much into our monitors. We're not going out there anymore, so our eyes are used to the same depth, and so our eye muscles go bye-bye, basically. And there is another factor that inhibits the vision of our Thomas severely. It's 100 times higher than with ladies. It's color blindness, most common in European people. In Norway, for example, we're up to almost 11 to 12%. And the least amount in the world, I think so far, is like in Japan. There we only have like 5.5%. And women have like 0.1% of color blindness or color inhibition. Adding on top, hearing loss due to lifestyle and surroundings as well in men adds 10% of inhibitions, and in women half the amount, like 5%. And then I have completed the internal factors. But then the external factors come as well, because we use our cell phones these days. We use smartwatches, and they all have lighted displays. So irregular light systems or sunlight will inhibit us around about 10%. And nyctalopia is a fancy word for night blindness. So that occurs in 20% of us worldwide due to physical factors in our eye. I don't know the English word, but it's Stäbchen, and they don't work during dark lighting, so we are nearsighted during the night, where we tend to do that. And then noises and other inhibitions pose like 30%. So the cognitive load, and remember part B of our whole accessibility adventure is cognition. On those two people, young people, is already 140, maybe 120% on the women. And I'd say that's quite high. Especially if we look at that, I've only focused on, with this cognitive load, on two examples of part A, the sensory inputs, which is vision and hearing. If you add on the touch, if you add on the balance in an industrial field or a laboratory or any other field where you need to walk around and need to use your mobile devices, then that number gets significantly higher. So it's most important to address those issues by reducing complexity. So now I'll switch to the other demo, part. So to give you like a small introduction, it's like a basic dashboard, and I've just built this last night. This is a desktop interaction tool that many people might use. In our case, it's for our job profiles and for like managing our work. And basically, there's already a big issue. For the European context, it's, for example, in accessibility, it's a red background for a whole region or whole continent that has 10% disability in spotting the depth and the differences between gray and red is not really recommended. Also, in here, for example, the information overload, jumping from left to right to left to right in this information field is very confusing and will load the people more. Basically, cognition is just the time that our body needs to work on the information that is given. So if you reduce this complexity, if you reduce the jumping, and if you put it straight, then our body will react faster, and we will be able to be more relaxed and more precise. So let's add on that, like current situations or what people tend to do. If I click on the action button that I've found by accident, I want to search the actions that I want to put in. And a modal goes up, and every other content is staying the same. And in the modal, I have to scroll up and down, and there's hundreds of options. That's also a big no-no. Don't do that. LinkedIn, for example, or Google has given a very good best practice. If you need to scroll the whole thing of the modal, if you need to put on this kind of a window, which is called modal, then darken the background. The user does not want nor need the other information. What the user needs is focus to be able to access. And do not give so many choices limit the choices. So switching to like something that would work, there's very little blue deficiency in Europe. Maybe you even make the sidebar in a gray tone, then you also get the whole monochromatic crowd people. You can also get the blue impaired people. And also you can align or array these containers of information in one row from top to bottom, left to right. So that's also a very big issue. Don't jump. In the European context, we read from the top left to the bottom right. So that is what people are used to. Please provide it to the people. And if you then have to put in an action button, then rather than putting on a modal, put on sublayers. Go into a deeper layer and give the people access to all this information and spread it out on this whole gray area. And give them clear exit points, left to right, right to left, and top to bottom, then back, bottom to top. So those were like the last points. And my final message for this talk today, just focusing on the inputs, is unload the brain. It doesn't matter if you have a physical interaction in an automated packaging company or a battery production company or wherever you work or in the administration, unload the brain by taking out the complexity. On the left-hand side, you can directly scan via QR code scanner my LinkedIn profile QR code. You can follow me and get updates on usability and also accessibility. I'll post videos and articles, and I've already done that for the past year or years. And on the right-hand side, I have provided the QR code for software craftspeople India community on YouTube, because this talk today will be uploaded there, I guess, and then you'll already have this video and many more videos, hopefully, that are coming on that side. Thank you very much. Ready for Q&A.
Hi, Stefan. I have a question. Yeah. Am I audible?
Yes, perfect.
Yeah. So that was a great demo, by the way. The contrast between the first website and the second one. So you were talking about modals, right? And then in the second layout, you had this kind of a sidebar. So, and you also mentioned like exit points. So can you just explain that a bit further? Like what do you mean by exit points in the context of a modal versus sidebar?
Yeah. Gladly. First of all, I would recommend this actions button on the right-hand top corner. So that is something that I would update on my demo. Why? Because if you move forward on a square or rectangular interface, always move to the right because it's perceived by people as forward movement. So this actions button on the sidebar is well meant, but not executed in a good fashion. So if we imagine it on the right-hand side, we go forward, and then the exit, like going one level back, needs to be on the opposite side on the left-hand top corner. So that people can always, with the law of similarity, interpret, going back is always on the left side, going forward is on the right-hand side. And that is not my invention. That is something that is given by the internet because logos, for example, are in 99% the home button, like return home, the exit for everybody. So and they are many times or most of the times placed on the left top corner. So that also has this reason. And that sublayer is just a reduction of content because I don't need all of these other call to actions here in my sidebar. So I basically just minimize the sidebar by emulating a same colored stripe so that I know I can go back to this interface and I give only the information that is needed at that point and time to the user. Does that answer the question, or have I been unclear?
Yeah, that answers my question. Thank you. Yeah, it makes sense that you kind of associate, but through repetition, you kind of associate certain things, right? Like you have the back button or the exit button on the left side. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Again,
I have a question. So where do we get this data about how many percentages of people are impacted in X country or in my country? So where do you get this data from? Is there a specific website for it?
sadly, there's thousands of websites, or happily, there's thousands of websites and reports. So I have not yet found a compendium of this. If you find something, then please let me know. It would make my life a lot easier. But basically, it's just researching the internet and going to Google Scholar or going outside of Google and trying to get dissertations and those kind of things, and then reading through it. That's how I approach it.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions in the channel, in the chat?
I had one or two questions, Stefan.
Please.
I think one was, as you were showing, going through the slides, it didn't only look as if we're talking about accessibility, but it seemed that we're also talking about diversity. So men versus women, or geographically Europe versus anywhere else, let's say. So what is your take? Because that's another thing that people talk about a lot lately, right? Diversity, having diverse teams, diverse user base, and how well do you think they're related when you choose let's say I'm assuming that when we talk about these 7 people that we have to do user study on, it has to be diverse enough or unique enough.
I hate to do this, but I have to answer with it depends. It basically depends on where do you see your target market. So basically, over job profiles, you specify. In a former company that I've worked for, we have specified we only want to target the German and the Japanese market. So we only took into consideration those 2 user groups. And we also did not talk about, because there were no female users, or very little, like not even 1%, we focused on men. And yes, it is also a social issue, but also it's a genetic predisposition issue. Europeans, or Caucasian Europeans, because there's many more other genetic predispositions, have a higher tendency towards red and green and blue blindness or weakness. That is not given in Japan, for example, or in a very little amount compared to that. And in women, due to on which chromosome these informations lie, it also does affect only very small audience in women. And also, accessibility is a social issue because there is many more shapes and forms than just male and female. I have only been talking about the physical issues, but accessibility is going to explode in the next few years because, yeah, our social consciousness seems to develop further and further and further. So that's good. I will have a job when I'll die, or before I die.
Awesome. And I hope there's, feel free to unmute and interrupt me if I'm taking too much time. But I had a follow-up question on that as well, because you did talk about it depends. So which kind of user base do you have? Let's say people in Japan may have different needs than somewhere else. And that leads me to the next thing. There are like compliances, right? 508 compliance in the United States is very famous. I think Utsav is over here. He has worked on one of the compliance. I forget. I always forget the acronym for that. Utsav, if you don't mind, can you?
WCAG guidelines.
WCAG guidelines. And then when you are doing that, you actually lose the freedom of saying it depends. You have to just go through every single compliance point, from color to fonts to headings and all of that. So what are your thoughts on that? Is compliance actually helpful when you're working on accessibility, or it's overkill?
It is helpful to a certain extent to get the minimum quality out there up, because what we here are talking about is not the minimum quality. That's more advanced, sadly. But getting the minimum quality up, those compliances do help. And I had a discussion with another researcher, an American researcher, a few weeks ago, and basically she just said, they're 30 years back. We have done so much more research, and big tech companies such as Google has put billions of dollars into this research. So the industry is always far ahead. But compliances will help for the first acceptance criteria, let's say it like that. I know it's tedious, but you need to first learn to walk, and then you can start to jog, and then you can start running. That's my opinion on that. So you need to convince clients that maybe there is another option if you are able to provide them with better accuracy or better accessibility than those minimum compliances.
Makes sense. I have one or two more questions, but I'm gonna wait unless someone else says. So Utsav has a question here. Go ahead, Utsav.
Yeah, my question was also related to diversity. So you talked about how people read from like top left to the bottom corner, right? Now this may change depending on the user group. So
Yes.
worldwide people read in another manner. For example, like just a small example, that I read mangas and I read from right, and I go right, and then I go bottom right, and then I go bottom left. So it's like the order changes. So how is it possible to make our design global so that it is accessible to everyone?
I have a clear answer. No, there is no global design language. There is no global way of doing things. There's only basic principles that are the same. Like Paul Ekman has proven that, for example, 5 basic emotions are the same all around the world, but there are many more than only 5 emotional states. So there is a huge diversity opening up. So designing for an Arabic reading person would most likely, I imagine, be different than designing something for people who read in the European or Western European or American context. So it depends on the target audience that you want to cater to. That gives you the diversity.
That makes sense. But again, a follow-up question. So in that case, if we are, say, targeting at least 2 different kinds of user groups, what can we do to ensure this? that it is inaccessible to both the user groups?
Prioritize. That's what clients come every day. I want everything at the same time, best case yesterday. And what we as software developers or physical developers and designers need to do is to prioritize or help our customers prioritize. Because our focus, again, should be the 80%. We need 80% of our users, and we need to make them happy through accessibility and function. And then we can focus on the other, how do you say that, context of reading or the other options, other features. So first, finish the one thing that caters to 80% of your users, and then add on the other features.
Okay, thanks. That helps because we are working on something similar right now. Yeah, we have another question in the chat by Sajjad. He's asking, are there any good blogs or resources or books that talks about user patterns?
Yes, there are. I do not have the list prepared just now. I will send that in another way or fashion. I'll post that on LinkedIn as a follow-up. There are several articles, several sources I would recommend. I've made a list. I've basically just forgotten in the stress to put it into a slide, but I will post that in the following days on via the LinkedIn. So yeah. There's sites on color blindness where you can research into what different types of color inhibitions there are, from monochromatic issues where people only see black and white and shades, up to blue issues that people have and night vision issues. So it's very well explained. There are examples there as well. And the same goes for hearing, for touching, and I'll add the links in the post on LinkedIn. And the second thing I would recommend is please read the ISO standard 9241/210, the ISO on human ergonomics. That is like the baseline of not only web products, but all the products out there, the International Standard Organization. I'll also add that in the posting list. Are there any more questions? Challenges?
We'll wait for a couple of minutes to see if there are any questions.
Stefan, are there any resources for UI, like HTML developers, that they can use more like patterns, what colors to use, what not to use?
Yes. Basically, it's all over the internet. So what we do with visual interfaces and building up design systems, we go on material.io. Material is the Google design guideline and principle, and it gives you a very good description of what works and what doesn't work. It does not give you the whole extent. So what we as designers always do is like we switch in between the Apple design systems or guidelines, the Fluent or Carbon, like Microsoft or IBM systems, or any other things that might have better patterns. But basically, Google with a material.io is my kind of go-to guide. Doesn't look nice, but it has the most profound testing due to Google having such a big world market and doing live testings every day, 24/7. And the second part, in the tool that we use, which is called Figma, that is a tool for building up visual interfaces and handing over to development teams. There are also already sets that you can buy regarding a certain system. So you can buy material Angular frameworks, you can buy React native frameworks. So there is, for a very low amount of money, like toolboxes that you can already buy and then modify so that it caters to your needs and your specific project.
Seven, we have another question. So Nishit is asking that the ISO standard seems to be paid. Are there any other sources to read?
Yes, there are other sources. I will post the list with my top 10 favorite go-to lists in the LinkedIn. I just don't want to switch in between the fields right now, so it would get messy.
Right, understandable. Yeah. We have another question, and this is, I think, quite a popular question in dev community. Sajak is asking that is it possible to achieve both visually appealing design and accessible design?
Yes, absolutely. I do believe in that. I mean, as a designer, I had my origins in aesthetics, and aesthetics is like the cherry on top. It is, you can make something very aesthetic if it adheres to the basic principles of accessibility engineering. I mean, there's cars out there that look beautiful, and like when the car was invented, it looked more like an atrocity, and nobody thought it could ever look nice. So we are in the infancy of the web. We're still in the toddler status compared to physical keyboard layouts. Typewriters have been there for hundreds of years. And yes, it is possible to really make it aesthetically appealing and emotionally appealing to people. And that's what I strongly believe in. But it has to work in the sense of access, because if nobody has access, I die in beauty, we say in German.
So simply UX first, UI second.
No, UI and UX are united by the U, users. So users first and clients second, I'd say, because it doesn't matter if you change a UI or a user experience, it will influence each other. But you need to focus on the user. You need to go ask the users. No wild guessing from a management board or from special groups within the companies. It should be tested. It should be interviewed. It should be researched. But both come first, UX and UI, because they enable each other. All right.
Stefan, I have a quick one. You had a metric about cognitive load, which was pretty
Yes.
eye-opening, actually. If you want to go back to that slide.
Do you mean those? Or do you mean the white one in the back?
This one. So, depending on correct. So depending on the person's abilities, there's such a high cognitive load which is added to right, which is added. So what I wanted to ask is, when you use something like the material library, is there a way to identify that, hey, if you use this solution, the cognitive load probably goes down by X%?
Yeah. Quickest way for me to establish that is testing with 7 users out of same age user group. So if I have a specific target audience, and if it, for example, is in between 20 to 30 male, or if it is in between 20 to 30 female, then I have already a specific set of needs. And then I can test it with 7 people and I get 92% accuracy feedback if it's accessible or not, and what works and what doesn't. I like, for example, take time measurements there. I do a median and also a average time measurement. I observe the click rates and many such things, and then simple post-it sessions. I write it down, then into Excel, and then I present it to the customers, or to the clients. Does that answer your question, or?
It does, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, as I said, or wrote in my intro, I started to try to dabble in accessibility during my studies, and I'm still learning as much every day as I did like 15 years ago or 20 years ago during my studies. And we're only at the beginning.
Stefan, we have 2 more questions. So the first is, do you feel that we have been innovating enough in the design space? And another is suggestions on extensions that give you accessibility compliance reports for your web applications.
Sorry, is it possible to achieve? Do you feel that we have been innovating enough in the design space? I do not understand that question. I'd say no, but if I guess you mean if maybe if you mean like, do we have to all do research from the beginning and see what works? No, there is a lot of frameworks out there provided by Google or Microsoft or IBM, Apple, other companies, and they have in this flat screen interface already shown us what works. But the next step will be 3D interaction, like physical or virtual enhancement of physicality in virtual reality. That is going to come, and there no design innovation has been done yet, or only like sub 1%, because simply said it's not tested yet. We do not know how people react. Innovation is always good, but stick to what's there for this medium, visual medium, and do not try to reinvent the wheel. It will save you a lot of tears and sweat. And the second question I have already forgotten. Are there any Chrome extensions that give you accessibility compliance reports for your sites? Good questions. I do not know. I'm pretty sure that there are. To be honest, I don't know. And yes, there are tools in browsers to support accessibility. I will also link, like, there's great voice playout tools. I'll also give you a little bit of a list of my talk to go to, like voice commands, playouts, and such things. Yes, we should use sounds on our sites, but cautiously. It also depends on the research. The question was like, should we use sounds in our websites? Regarding that, most of applications go away from native applications to progressive web applications. So everything's on the browser, even on the phone right now. Voice or sound inputs can trigger very well calls to actions with mobile devices. For example, in the industry, we had an example. People needed to see a warning light in a factory, but the factory was 10 buildings big, and it was in the night shift sure that the people would be on the other end of the company premises. So there would be a lot of walls in between the actual machine and the visual light, which gives a warning, and the person who is tending to those machines during night shifts. So what we did was to implement a sound call to action and also a haptic call to action for mobile devices. So that is triggered by this alarm light when it goes close to red alert. So there will be different sequences of audio and haptic feedback on your mobile phone that are triggered so that you are called to action and see, okay, in hall B1, there's the second machine in the first line. I have to immediately go there and tend to the machine. So yes, I'd say in those cases, but not on a general measure, because if everybody screams, the mess will be only louder. So use it with caution if you need it for a specific case. Is it okay to play music in websites without user content? I have never tried this, but I would say all of those hotlines that I have to stay on to reach customer support play me music, and I start to hate this kind of music after 1 hour of waiting in line. I don't know. Tell me when you have significantly increased an accessibility issue with that. I have not found any yet. It's the same with pictures in the background of information. It often distracts people. So in the past, there were like photos as water signs used behind buttons or call to actions. And what we've found out on the visual field was like they distract more than they help, because nobody even cares about those pictures. And so basically keep it clean on the visual side. And if it doesn't help on the audio side, I also say keep it clean, because people know what they want to hear. Only use sound for call to actions or notifications that are relevant for the functionality or accessibility, I'd say. Is consistency in design and color coding also a part of accessibility or treated as a different aspect of UX? To me, it is the same. There's even a psychological law about it, the law of similarity. So people will notice if there is something off. And the higher the resolution or the raffinity of your designs already are, the more likely it is for people to spot differences, like minor nuances in color, and everything. Car industry again. Car industry on a product level is one of the highest levels you could get, and people will notice if in Germany, for example, where people are super car crazy, they will notice if the color tone of your Audi or your VW or your Lamborghini is slightly off. And so consistency is key to both UI or interaction design on a visual level, as well as to user experience architecture, because it drives home your functions. If you use color coding for your functions, consistency is key.
So I had a question, Stefan. So when we talk about accessibility, do we even consider the language of the content that is on our website into the factor? Like different people can have different levels of literacy, and if I, for example, have a lot of jargon and buzzwords on my content, uh, a lot of people might not able to understand. So is it also part of accessibility?
Very good question. Yes, it is. That is part of what I've said before. What is it? It's part of a cognitive process. And example given, UX writing is something that has been emerging over time. So saying something as clear as possible towards my target audience is crucial and will be recognized more and more over time. Because in the past, companies have lost their users by saying things too complicated. And users nowadays, I mean, in the B2B section, users are still more patient because the solutions are atrocious most of the time. And in the B2C sector, a company quickly dies, basically because the public just drops it. Like if Instagram or Facebook does something, a major or minor shift even, then millions of people already drop the feature. But yes, it is. I regard it as highly important, but it's not yet recognized enough, I feel, even less than just the vision aspect of interaction design.
Yeah, thank you. That answers my question. Just a small follow-up question. Is there a way to automate the testing of these things? Uh, you know, it's very subjective, right? Language being simpler, these things are very subjective. How do I test this as a developer? Uh, like, do we have to go manually?
Yes, there is. If you do it on a small scale, like I do it, then basically you can do it with those 7 users, and you can provide them with a version A and a version B, and then note their reaction or tendencies toward it. Like let them repeat something to you if they know what the call to action means and if there are any preferences. And Google does that on a daily basis in the internet. But I do not have access or do not know the ways Google goes. So my recommendation would be like A/B testing in this case is the most efficient solution. Take 7 people, provide them with 2 or 3 options, and then see what gets the job done.
Yeah, thank you.
$13.35. So I think we're at the end of our session, right, guys?
Yes. It seems like we do not have any more questions. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Stefan, for doing this with us, for interacting with our community. And a note to attend is that this recording will be available on our YouTube channel in the next 7 to 10 days. As I said earlier, we do this session every month, and in the next month, we have Fernando Doglio coming up, and he's going to be talking about demystifying React.js with Vanilla.js. And at last, thank you all the attendees for staying with us.
Thanks to the
Thank you
community.
so much,
Thanks,
Stefan.
guys.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Thanks, Stefan.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Stefan.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stefan.